This House is now in session. Careful, Nigel.
Mr. Speaker, government notice recommitted.
Government business recommitted.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the Electric Light and Power Amendment Bill 2019.
Okay.
First reading of bills recommitted.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the first reading of the Electric Light and Power Amendment Bill 2019.
Okay. Government business resume.
Order number 5, sir.
Number 5.
Order number 5. In the name of the Honourable Minister of Labour and Social Partnership Relations, sir. To move the second reading of the Public Service Miscellaneous Provisions Bill 2019.
Honourable Member for St. Peter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The bill before this chamber is one that is considered a consequential, well, a series of consequential amendments. The House would remember that a few months ago, we would have laid, debated, and passed in this chamber an amendment to the Constitution which, at its core, spoke to the creation of some service commissions, a reorganizing of sorts. What was called the Public Service Commission is now the Administrative, General, and Professional Service Commission, the Police Service Commission, now the Protective Services Commission, and there's the Teaching Service Commission. And this was done, we would remember, in an effort to not just streamline how the management of workers in the public service was handled, but also to add a measure of efficiency to the process. And so it was recognized that, for example, the numbers divided across the three commissions, public service, police service, and teaching service, there were quite a number of workers who came under the umbrella of the Public Service Commission. And so some of those who would have been previously covered under the Public Service Commission are now covered under the Protective Services Commission. Police officers, as were before, but also immigration officers, customs officers, government security guards, etc. That act created those service commissions and the new alignment of categories of workers across those commissions. While that amendment to the Constitution had been debated and passed, there are a number of other pieces of legislation that need to be amended to reflect those amendments done to the Constitution. I think it was Constitution Amendment number 2, 2019, as far as I can remember. So that, for example, the Pensions Act, Cap 25, still lists those original commissions, and that act is to be amended so that it reflects what is now a part of the Constitution. The Teaching Service Commission, the Protective Services Commission, and the Administrative, General, and Professional Service Commission. And there are a number of other acts that are to be amended. The Public Service Act may be the most significant one, because that covers broadly employment in the public service. That also has to be amended to reflect the three commissions. It also has to be amended so that where the phrase Civil Establishment, well, the Act, Civil Establishment Act is mentioned, the Public Service Act is now mentioned, for example, in the Pensions Act and some of the other acts that are consequentially to be amended because of that amendment to the Constitution. The Chief Personnel Officer, that title now becomes, well, has become, but in this bill, becomes the Director General, and in the Public Service Act, the functions of the Director General are to be included and listed. And I think it is important to remind us and to remind the country through you of those roles to be performed by the Director General of Human Resources, Director General Human Resources. The move from personnel to human resources is not an insignificant one. I believe, and this government believes, that words mean something. They send messages to people. And while we had personnel officers before, and those of us who've been HR practitioners over the years would remember that personnel had to do mainly with the keeping of files and records. Human resources and human resource management has come to mean the management of workers in their employment, but also the development of those workers both in their employment but also their wider development, the encouragement of the development of people. And so the role of the Director General, some of those functions include providing human resource management advice to the services commissions, but also to permanent secretaries and to heads of department. One of those roles is to advise the minister in the formulation and the development of human resource management policy for the public service. Now, I want to come back to the provision of human resource management advice to permanent secretaries and heads of department. But the Director General of Human Resources also deals with selection, appointment, promotion, discipline. That role, that function, and the person holding that office is to carry out human resource management audits throughout the public service. The role is what, in contemporary HR practice, is the role of a fully functioning Director of Human Resources. In this case, Director General Human Resources. And so that person, the whole of that position, has the function of ensuring that good people development, good worker development practices exist across the public sector. Now, I spoke just now to advising permanent secretaries and heads of department on good human resource management practices. And I have to say here, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that these consequential amendments and the original bill, Constitution Amendment number 2 bill that we would have passed some time ago, speaks, and I hope you don't tire of hearing me say this, but I have to repeat it because of what I see on an almost weekly basis in the public service. There are people who take the titles of leadership in the public service of this country. Most, if not all of them, have come through the ranks. So they may have started as admin officers and move up to SAOs and DPSs and PSs, etc. Or in statutory organizations, they may be CEOs and other types of leaders within those organizations. But too many of them, Mr. Deputy Speaker, have taken upon themselves the role of devil. And they persist in mistreating the people whose development they as leaders ought to be encouraging. Sometimes they refuse to follow process. Sometimes they refuse to allow what is now not just legally referred to, but commonly referred to as natural justice. That is to say, if a person is accused of wrongdoing, that person ought to have the opportunity to hear what it is they've been accused of, to have some period of time to think through and articulate a response, and then in a meeting with those who are superior to them, bring balance by having somebody sit with them in that discussion or that hearing with their superior. We have leaders in the public service and leaders in statutory organizations who sometimes refuse to allow that process to happen. In other words, they've come to the point where they believe that because they are leaders, that they can treat people however they like, because they are the boss. So if I don't want you to bring somebody, I send the union delegate out. And a lot of it, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I think comes from the view that the representative bodies of workers constitute the enemy. And I want to say that only terrible HR managers, only terrible supervisors, only terrible leaders in organizations take that view. Because if you believe that somebody representing somebody else is your enemy only because that person or organization wants to bring balance or wants to articulate on behalf of the person they're representing, then it tells me you should not be a leader. It tells me you're not fit for leadership. It tells me that you are so insecure that you should be removed from your position. And so the role of the Director General in the public service, based on the acts, the act and these amendments that we will discuss, hopefully fairly briefly this evening, seeks to bring to the management of people in the public service a fresh new approach, an approach that says we are dealing with people, we operate in the 21st century, we are, as the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northeast often says, on the cusp of the third decade of the 21st century. And so we ought to be practicing a modern human approach to managing those who work with us, around us, and those whom we supervise. I would also want to encourage, and I don't need to be careful how I say this, I want to encourage those who lead at the policy level to have quiet words with those whom they also supervise and indicate to them that at the policy level, we are taking a human approach to the management of human beings. And so if they are going to be representing us wherever they are, then they too have to adopt a similar approach. They have to understand that we treat to people as human beings because people are human beings. And I just want to encourage policymakers to do that and not allow those whom they may have appointed or selected to act as whatever the strongest word that is allowable in this chamber is. But I don't want to get too excited. I was going to use the word demagogues, but the Honourable Member for Christchurch, where Central uses it so often, somebody may mistake me for him. And that is, well, mistake me for him. And I wouldn't want all that attaches to that to happen. Now, there is also, because of the time between the passing of the constitutional amendment and this, there's provision for the validation of the actions that would have taken place in the interregnum, in the intervening period, and that is also provided for in the amendment to the Public Service Act. That consequential amendment is provided in this bill. The Public Employees Pension Act is also to be amended in this consequential act. The Service Commissions Act is also to be amended for obvious reasons, because the major changes have been, well, part of the major change, beside the Director General's designation and role, has been the outlining of the service commissions. There are also the amendments that are to be done to those persons who were previously covered by the Public Service Commission, who are now covered by the Protected Services Commission, so that the Fire Service Act has to be amended, the Police Act has to be amended. There is provision to amend the Police Complaints Authority Act, the Prison Act, the Immigration Act, because they now all fall under the Protective Services Commission. And the regulations that are to be amended, Mr. Deputy Speaker, are the pensions regulations, the pensions Barbados overseas officers retirement regulations, the police band apprenticeship regulations, the service commission police service regulations, the police promotion regulation, and the police discipline regulation, and the service commission public service regulations. These are all, as I indicated earlier, consequential on the amendment to the Constitution that we would have discussed and passed earlier. Now, the matter of training and development that I began to speak to when I spoke about the function, the role of the Director General, and the Director General is one officer mentioned. There is also the officer responsible for training and development, a new officer in the, well, a new title, but again, speaking to the role that this government sees training and development playing in the matter of developing people. We've indicated to the country that part of the Barbados Economic Recovery and Transformation Program is the RERE program, where the 2 Rs speak to retraining and retooling. We have said to the country that retraining and retooling is going to fall under the ambit of what we call the National Training Initiative. And I would just want to update the Chamber on the progress that we've made so far in that regard. Last time I spoke about this, I would have indicated, I think I indicated that there would have been adverts out. The interview process has taken place. The interviewing panel has proposed to Cabinet, and Cabinet has approved the employment of a Director, National Training Initiative. And the Director has started to work. The intention is to have the Oversight Committee is meeting at this point every 2 weeks. We had our last meeting last Tuesday, and outlining to the Director the functions going forward. So at this point, we are working on ensuring that we know every single job or occupation or calling or however else these things are referred to. We catalog all of those. We do not intend to create duplication. And so the Manpower Research Unit in the Ministry of Labour and Social Partnership Relations will be providing the information that they have. Information will also come from the Ministry of the Public Service, because public service positions also need to be catalogued. We will be liaising with the third sector so that positions within civil society organizations are also catalogued. Part of that retraining and retooling, well, there are 2 parts of it. One speaks to upskilling, retraining, because as times change and job functions change, there is a need to ensure that persons in all job functions are up to date with the latest in terms of practice, in terms of use of technology. Retooling, we see more as having to do with transitioning from one occupation to another, and that is happening as we speak, that kind of transitioning all over the world, and is going to pick up pace as the rate of change in technology increases, so that our people have to be reminded that the days of going into a job and expecting to spend 25 or 30 or even 40 years, those days are probably over, except in only a few occupations. I recently had the honor of attending a retirement function for the principal of the Royal Netherlands Primary School, and he'd spent 40 years in teaching. But teaching is a calling, a special calling. I'm sure the Honourable Member for St. Michael Southeast, the leader of government business, would agree with that. It is a calling, and teachers not only feel special, I believe they are special because they impart knowledge and create learning environments for our young people. That said, it still has to be understood that those days of jobs for life are probably over for many other occupations, and even those who teach have to be teaching our young people to have the kinds of open minds that allow them to be able to change as situations around them change. The National Training Initiative, though, will place particular emphasis on excellence, on creating excellence in every sphere of activity. And so part of the work of the director and the small staff that will work with her to create the unit to execute this program, part of what they will be doing is identifying standards of excellence. What are the best practices, not just in the Barbados context, but in the world context? And that's because Barbados is a country, but it's a country that has to compete in a global space. And so we have to find out what are those standards of excellence that we are calling ourselves and our people to reach. And once those have been established, then those who are going to be retrained and retooled are going to be challenged to reach those standards of excellence. What we want as a government, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is that even as we work through the Barbados Economic Recovery and Transformation Program, as we work through the arrangement with the International Monetary Fund, we want to ensure that at the end of the process, that Barbados is in a much better position than we would have been at any time in our past. We don't just want to return to the best of the past. The T in the BERT program, and I know the Honourable Member for St. Michael West keeps referring to a fellow called Bert. Now, I am surprised that either the member for Christchurch, East Central, or the member for St. Michael, South Central, has not risen on a point of order to tell him that Bert only comes here periodically. He is Mr. Van Selm. That is the fellow called Bert. The real Bert that serious people talk about is Barbados Economic Recovery and Transformation Plan. The T in that speaks to transformation, because it is this government's intention that as this program is rolled out, that we transform not just our economic sectors, but that all our people reach a different standard when this program, as the program is rolled out. And transformation, for those of us who understand the word, is not a destination, because transformation speaks to the constant reach for excellence, for getting better and better and better. And so the National Training Initiative will seek to engender in our population the constant reach to do better and to do better and to do better. And we are confident that Barbados will be the beneficiary as all of us continue to improve and do better and better and better. I want to reiterate, as I come close to concluding, that the National Training Initiative will be targeting all workers across all sectors across the country. Public sector, private sector, third sector. So government departments, private enterprise, civil society organizations, all workers will be included in this drive to create excellence in our people and an understanding that we have to keep working and reaching to do better. The development of people, Mr. Deputy Speaker, should be of paramount importance to any government anywhere. A government is elected by people to improve, to facilitate the conditions, or to create the conditions and to facilitate them having improvements in their lot, improvements in their standard of living, in their level of education. That's what governments are elected to do. And this government was elected to do that, and that is why we are pushing forward with programs like these that seek to improve people generally so that their lot can be improved, so that their outlook can be improved. And that development of people is important, especially for countries like ours. Small island developing states, vulnerable in a big world where laws and rules are made for us and we are expected to take whatever is put on the table for us. In a country like, in a world like that, a country like ours has to focus on developing its people. And Barbados has done over the years and across successive administrations, maybe up until recently, but generally speaking up to 2008, from the 1950s, there has been that emphasis on people and developing people. And that has placed Barbados in a relatively good position. We had a bit of a hiccup, but it was a pretty long hiccup over the past 10 years. Well, not the last 10, because we've been in office for over a year already. But that period of time that most of us would want to forget, we had a bit of a hiccup there. But all along before that, we have been focused on developing our people, and as a result, developing our country while developing our people. If training and development is to be successful, then those who lead, and I just want to reiterate this because very often money, and I've known this personally on behalf of the organizations I worked for in the past, HR professionals organize training all the time. And one of my first training as an HR professional, one of my first training programs was actually facilitated by the Honourable Member for St. James South. And that is how I got to know her and her proficiency and her passion when she is imparting training to team members. But she will tell you that you can do the best training, and the students, the workers, can be enthusiastic about all the information that's being imparted. They can leave training sessions prepared to go back to the workplace and to execute with passion and with excellence. But if they meet up, some of the leaders, some of the people we have masquerading as leaders, then very, very quickly, the investment in training is lost. Leaders have the power to kill every bit of passion that a newly well-trained worker can bring to the shop floor. And so I want to end close to where I started by reiterating first that the Director General and the staff in that office has a responsibility to ensure that those who lead in the public service, in other words, those who lead in the service of the public, the people of Barbados, are suitable for the function. They have to be suitable for the function. And I want to say, because there is this reputation, I'm not sure if it is true, but there is this reputation that people can do as they like in the public service because you cannot get rid of them. I don't like that word, but that's the word that is used. I want to state that there is no system anywhere that allows people to get away with anything. People get away with things because they're not held accountable, because those who supervise them are not prepared to put either pen to paper or fingers to keyboard to document if there is nonsense that is taking place. And so people do as they like because they are allowed to. The office of the Director General is the office that is responsible for ensuring that leaders first in the public sector are held to account. Because an organization will only rise as high as its leadership. And if its leadership is weak, insecure, inhumane, then that organization will not rise very far. And the public, the people of Barbados, will continue to say, well, I call the place and the phone rings forever. And we blame the people who are supposed to answer the telephone. And from time to time, I'm not prepared to say most times because I haven't done any empirical research, but from time to time, some of those people are totally frustrated with the people they have to work with, those who supervise them. And so I'm calling on the Office of the Director General to take seriously the mandate. The title has been changed. We as policymakers expect that we will see a new approach. And Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I am going to say quite clearly on the floor of this House that if I don't see it, I'm going to be talking about it. Because I owe my presence in here only to the people of St. Peter. Only to them. I owe my leading off of this bill to the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northeast, but I owe my presence here to the people of St. Peter. And if they are not seeing any change in approach, it means that the head is bad. And those of us who are policymakers will have to take some of the blame. And so we have to ensure that those who are in position at the executive level, that is to say, the Director General and those who work in the Office of the Director General, have to take their responsibilities seriously. They have to look past this notion of taking bread out of people's mouths, because when you allow nonsense to happen, you keep bread in a person's mouth and you do an entire country a disservice. So you're trying to kill a whole country to save one person. I don't go that route. I believe that we have an obligation to a country. And so you don't, like some of the demagogues, on the first misdeed, you don't toss a person out. That is not how good HR practitioners do their job. There is counseling, there is coaching. And most people, Mr. Deputy Speaker, will change. There are a few that are incorrigible. Those people have to be dealt with. I believe there are few. But sometimes those few are so bad that it makes an entire system, an entire department look bad. And so those few have to be held accountable, and they have to bear the consequence of continued misdeeds. The Office of the Director General has a pivotal role to play in ensuring that good HR practice takes place, that the training and development that this government is going to be investing millions of dollars in. We expect that maybe each year over $20 million is going to be spent in training and development across institutions, including the National Training Initiative. But we want this money to be properly invested. We don't want to throw away the money. We don't want to throw it down a hole. We need to make sure that once this money is spent, once the investment in people is made, that we see difference, we see improvement, and we see that drive toward excellence. And so, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I just want to again reiterate that these consequential amendments are important to ensuring that that substantive change that we did in the Constitution, to the Constitution some months ago, can be put fully into effect. I want to call on the public of Barbados to hold not just policymakers, politicians accountable, but I'm calling on the public to hold accountable those in positions, the Director General and those in that office, those responsible for training and development. They also have to be held accountable, and the public, the people of Barbados, who are the users of the services provided by those at the executive level, they must hold persons in position to account. We have laid out that we have made these changes because we want to see a difference, an improvement, and we are calling on the public to add their voice, add their weight, put some pressure on to make sure that the changes and the improvements we expect to see are realized. And so, with those remarks, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
Member for St. James South.
Thank you so much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I want to rise and support my colleague, the Honourable Member from St. Peter, who just introduced this bill. I would have to describe myself like one of the women in the Bible who, when they heard a piece of news that was so welcome to them, their heart leapt for joy. When I saw this particular Civil Service Reform Amendment Act, I was so pleased to see the appointment of the Director General of Human Resources, because for change to adequately take place within the civil service, the leadership of the civil service has to be strengthened. The systems and processes have to be changed. And I recognize that when I saw this particular amendment, that this was another piece in the entire transformation that the Barbados Labour Party administration is introducing to Barbados to make Barbados work. To make Barbados work. And so I was very, very pleased to see the appointment of the Director General and all of the functions that are being assigned to that person. And I'm trusting that along with establishing the office and providing it with staff, that there will be adequate resources to ensure that they'll be able to carry out this particular function. Now, why is this particular reform important? Why is civil service reform important? It's because of the purpose and the role that a civil service has. It has to be able to provide and coordinate services on behalf of the collective, on behalf of us, the citizens. And if done efficiently, it will save time, it will save costs, but the most important thing is that it will produce results that will enrich the lives of citizens. That when a civil service functions really well, the country prospers. Citizens' lives are more satisfying. There's greater sense of security. There's a greater ability to achieve because the civil service is providing those range of services, projects, and initiatives that are needed to enable citizens to live good lives. So when there is a failure to reform your civil service, it hampers your economic growth, and it creates hardships for citizens and businesses. We've seen the work that this administration has already done in that regard. We have the customs reform that the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central has put in place. We see the good work that the Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central in relation to the town planning. The work that is being done by the Honourable Member of St. Peter with the RERE program and the training. The work that's being done by Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central in relation to reforms in education. All of these are important steps that we have to take in order to create a civil service and a society that functions really well. So when do you know you have a problem in your civil service? You know you have a problem when your government expenditure exceeds 40% of your GDP, when it is bloated, inefficient, and poorly run, when the execution of projects actually undermines your agenda rather than enables your agenda, when departments exceed their budgets, or they have a lot of unspent balances close to the end of the year, and then there's a huge spending frenzy, which means that critical parts of the agenda were not driven forward during the year. And when, Mr. Deputy Speaker, ministries have an agenda that is slightly different to the agenda of the minister who heads it, that is when you know you have a problem. And this particular scenario, when I read it, did not refer to Barbados. This actually referred to the conditions found by the New Zealand government that came into power in the late 1980s. They were confronted with this issue and recognized that they were not going to be able to carry out their election promises and take New Zealand forward unless they were able to put in place civil service reform. And over the next 20 years, they worked assiduously to grapple with this matter and were able to successfully create a civil service that today is much more efficient and delivers better for the citizens. So, to me, that sets an example for Barbados to follow, and it sets a precedent that we can look at their experiences and see what works for Barbados and use that to help us to do civil service reform. Many countries right now are on the move in relation to their civil service because of that connection they make between the growth of the economy and being fit for purpose. And England is another country that is also looking at civil service reform. They started some work in 2010, but they've created a renewed vision for their civil service for 2017. They want to create a brilliant civil service that is strategic, that is nimble, and that is effective. So, I am pleased that Barbados is following in good steps in seeking to make civil service reform a part of what we do, and the appointment of the Director General is going to be very critical to that. Now, in order to bring change to the civil service, one has to understand its history. And one of the things that we have to bear in mind is that when we look at what would have happened during the colonial period and the establishment of the civil services that we have inherited, you must be able to look at a difference between the type of civil service that would have been created, say, in America, when the English colonists would have gone in and decided to settle and build a nation, or what would have happened in New Zealand, versus the approach that they would have used in Africa, or the approach that they would have used in the Caribbean. And it's a difference that's important. Because places like Australia, New Zealand, and America, they were settled for the primary purpose of creating a space for the citizens of Europe to expand and build their lives a permanent residence in those countries. And therefore, the focus and the philosophy of the civil service that would have been established in that time was centered on the development and the prosperity and the advancement of the best interests of all the citizens that would have lived in that space. Whereas if you contrast what would have happened when they were seeking to establish a civil service within the Caribbean or Africa, which were never seen as permanent homes, but rather were these temporary stations in which some of their citizens established businesses to extract wealth. And therefore, the civil service was not placed there for the primary purpose of creating a good life for all citizens, but it was created and designed and structured to maintain order, to maintain peace, and to safeguard the property and the well-being of planters, as opposed to wanting to safeguard the well-being and the prosperity of all the citizens, which would have included the black populations that would have lived there. And that is one of the primary differences between the establishment of the civil service in those two sections. And the structure and philosophy and focus that would have been used in the Caribbean, sometimes when you examine the civil service, only some areas have changed. We still have remnants of that philosophy still underpinning a lot of things that we do. You still see the focus on law and order and a neglect of the convenience of the consumer or citizen, or the advancement of the prosperity of the citizen. And I'm sure that people could give us a myriad examples of those inconveniences that we experience. So today, where are we? Desperately in need of reform. We are appointing a Director General of Human Resources, and we're hoping that that office will help to galvanize and catapult the reform program that can get Barbados to where it wants to be in terms of a high-performing civil service. But what is it they have to work with, and what is the starting point? I'm happy to report that I have found within the civil service in Barbados that there are what I call some high-performing stars. Very experienced officers, highly trained, passionate, and committed to their jobs, and go to work every day not only to do their own work, but also to make up for the deficits that they may find around them. And I want to congratulate them, because Barbados would not be where it is today had it not been for that group that helped to carry the load when others were not. But we also have among that group our average performers, those who have to be led or those who have to be driven, who will only go as far as the tide is taking them or as far as the process will allow them, who have no particular commitment necessarily to improving the system or changing the system. Indeed, their word to the citizen, when the citizen complains about a particular process or complains about the way something is done, their attitude is, but this is how we do it, and you have to learn to live with it. And over time, they become indifferent to the pain, they become indifferent to the cost created by the way in which things are done in the civil service. And then you have the disenchanted and disengaged workers, the ones who are no longer engaged in the process, that collecting that money at the end of the month is all they want. And the retirement and being able to be promoted to a higher position before they retire is their only goal. And this is the group that today Barbados has to sit and make a determination, how are we going to address reform given that this is what we are dealing with? So a number of things must change. First of all, the basis of recruitment must change. There has to be stronger leadership and that was so ably spoken to by the Honourable Member for St. Peter. And training is important. The processes and systems that we use in the service have to be revamped, and that has already started. The Honourable Member in the other House, the Minister of Innovation, Science and Technology, has been tasked with the introduction of technology to help us be more efficient and to improve our processes and systems that we can deliver better on our projects. How we do appointments, appraisals and promotions have to be updated, and we have to have a proper monitoring and accountability system, and the performance, the PRD program needs proper implementation. But one of the things in my experience as a professional in this area is that in order to bring meaningful and sustained change, it has to go beyond the training, it has to go beyond the systems and the monitoring. All of those are an important part of the transformation process. But one of the most critical things that needs to be addressed is the issue of people's work attitudes. And this is across Barbados. This is not just a civil service issue. This is across Barbados. That what we need is a reformation of how people see work. We need a reformation of how people see service. We need a reformation as to how people see performance and accountability. And in order to do that, Mr. Deputy Speaker, there are two things that have to be addressed. Two things, and they're not only two, but I want to mention two things that are critical to that reformation process. One of the things that comes from out of our culture, that has flowed from out of our history, is the sensitivity that we have as Barbadians to criticism. That when someone says to us, you're doing something incorrect, or you're doing something wrong, or you're being held accountable, we take it personally. And when our emotions are offended, we feel that we can legitimately express our dissatisfaction with being corrected by not cooperating, by withholding our labor, by staying home, being absent, coming in late. And that sensitivity to criticism has been used by generations of workforces to tame and overpower their leaders. Leaders have been burnt when they step out and seek to coach or seek to correct an individual. And if they have not done it in the correct way, as was pointed out by the Honourable Member for St. Peter, and you get the backlash where a person stays home for 3 weeks, they send in a sick paper. They get and they scroll you up with all the other workers, so the other workers now are vexed with you and they're not speaking and they're not cooperating. After a while, a supervisor will think twice about pulling up somebody for lateness. Will think 3 times before they give people honest feedback on their work. And this is what is defeating HR professionals, supervisors and managers across the Caribbean. They have become afraid to discipline, and they only discipline when they're angry. And when they discipline when they're angry, they're going to do it wrong. And when they do it wrong, they fall into the trap and find themselves in hot water with the union. So what do? They don't speak directly to their workers, but they complain about them in the office, at the meetings. And therefore, they stay frustrated and become prisoners to the conditions, the cultural work conditions that now flow around them, and feel helpless in how to change and take it forward. And that's one of the reasons why training your supervisors, spending more time with your supervisors and managers in training is more important. To work with them to help them to overcome their timidity and to build their confidence, to engage and coach staff. And also to work with your staff to help to shift their attitudes, to make them more receptive to change. And this is what will help to empower and energize our training initiative, our RERE program. This is what will help us not to lose or waste the investment in money by taking the time to be able to address the psychocultural issues that affects performance. The other thing that helps to affect performance coming out of our psychocultural perspectives is how Caribbean people see service. Caribbean people see service as a gift. It is a gift that I give to you because I like you. It is a gift I give to you because our interaction has been pleasant and I reward you with my service. In performance cultures, that is not how they operate. For them, service is a promise. I promise you that you will get this quality of service. It will be delivered in such and such a time, and this is the standard. And therefore, their focus is on delivering that service consistently each and every time. Whereas in the Caribbean, while that service is possible and our people can and do deliver wonderful service, it is inconsistent because we use it as currency. We use it as currency to build relationships to get what we need. We use it as a means of barter and exchange. I am good to you, and I expect you in turn to be good to me. If you're not good to me, or if you offend me, I will punish you by not serving. I will punish you by withholding that document that you need to go and get a result. In the civil service, it could manifest itself in not doing your license or not processing a payment. In the private sector, it can manifest itself in making a project collapse and not go forward. All of these are the things that occur because we use service as a gift rather than making service a promise. So what can we do to get out from where we are? How can we empower the office of the Director General of Human Resources? I remember that the Barbados Light and Power had wanted to transform their service and their work performance. And one of the things they did, they established an improvement process within their company. They were not in a position where the union would allow them to switch people from a guaranteed salary to a performance-based salary. So what did they need to do? They decided that they were going to give an incentive for meeting the targets and meeting the standards. And they were able to be very successful in raising their quality of service, and so the entire nation benefited because customer service had improved and they were able to deliver as they ought to. And this is something that we may have to look at. We can't do it at this time, but I'm hoping that down the road as things improve, perhaps we will be able to find a way to incentivize. We may not be able to do it with money, but there might be other things that we can do that can help motivate our staff to be able to raise the standard and quality of their service. And there's so many benefits to be derived if we are successful in improving the quality of our civil service. One of the things I find, because as a people we don't understand business and we don't understand costs, many people feel whether I work fast or whether I work slow, you're going to pay me the same salary. So it doesn't matter if I work fast or slow. If we are going to change the way in which people see service and get them to understand it's important to work quickly and produce results quickly, it is necessary to help them to understand the opportunity costs. And I'll just explain this because the citizen needs to understand too how it translates into more taxes when people don't understand the opportunity cost. If you hire a staff person to deliver 10 units of service, and you're paying that person $2,000 to deliver those 10 units of service, but the person only delivers 5, it means that if they're to produce the 10 units and you're paying them $2,000, then it is $200 that you are looking at per unit. But if the person only produces 5, it's gone up to $400 to produce that unit. So if you have pressure from your customers to deliver 10, you now have to go and hire another person at an additional $2,000 in order to get to your output of 10, which means that the cost of running that operation goes up. What does that mean in the civil service? It means that when the civil service takes long to produce a result, it means the cost of each unit of output is going to rise. And if the citizens pressure government to produce the result, they are then forced to hire more people to produce the same, the original intended result, which means they will have to increase taxes to get the output. And once you increase taxation, the cost of living will go up. But the cost of living doesn't just go up for the people who are going to use the service. That cost of living goes up for everyone in the society. And so Barbadians are unaware of how we help to drive up our cost of living because we're not giving the level of output, making it more and more difficult for our own children and our grandchildren and our neighbors and our relatives to be able to get ahead in life because things are costing more, that we delay the dreams of our citizens when we make things cost more. That's one of the reasons why civil service reform is so critical, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that it must become a focus of this government, that we have to find a way to stimulate and motivate every single civil servant from the top of the civil service all the way to the bottom to recognize that they can make a material difference to the quality of life of every citizen, and allow us to live in peace, in security, in prosperity, because our civil service is able to deliver on the programs that are necessary to the country. And I want to encourage every person in Barbados, when the national initiative is announced, I ask of everyone, public and private, get on board. Lay a hold of it with all of your heart, because this is how we're going to make a better Barbados for everyone. This is how we're going to control our cost of living, and this is how we're going to build prosperity. So I want to commend
Member has 5 more
bill
minutes.
to
5
the
more
Speaker.
minutes.
I'm ready to finish. Thank you so much.
You're finished.
Yes, and I want to commend this to the House, but I in particular want to commend this action as a part of what we are doing as a new administration to transform Barbados, and I want to commend it to the citizens and ask everyone, let's get on board, let's make Barbados better, and let us raise the level of our productivity.
Well said. Well said. Very good. Sure. Member for St. Peter.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I want to thank the Honourable Member for St. James South for her intervention. Thought-provoking, as her interventions always are, and somebody who I've always looked up to, not physically, but in terms of her intellect and knowledge of training and development, but particularly on human behavior. And I think the points that she made were important. As she made a point about threats and people using different techniques, was reminded of a scenario which I shared with the Honourable Member for St. Michael's South. I worked in a hotel many years ago, and there was a little bit of a dispute between a food and beverage server and the supervisor in the restaurant. And it was early December, and the food and beverage server said to the restaurant supervisor, "Look, don't get me vexed. I got 3 sick days left." And that was my introduction to the threats that could be used. So that at the busiest time of a restaurant's life cycle, annual cycle, the supervisor was being advised to back off. Otherwise, he may come to work one morning and realize he was one team member short. But those are some of the things
Threats.
that leaders have to face in the process of leadership. And it reaffirms my thinking that training, leaders need training. And the leaders that I'm coming across need a lot of training. Training in how to handle people. Like I said earlier, when a person is allowed to get away with something like that, then the entire organization will suffer as a result. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I think all that's left to me is to commend these consequential amendments to the Chamber, acknowledging that they essentially will assist in the process of putting into force the constitutional amendment that would have gone some time ago. And with those closing remarks, I want to move that this bill be read a second time.
Question is that this bill be read a second time. All members in favor say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'd want to move that you do not leave the chair and that the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that I do not leave this chair and this House resolve itself in committee for the further consideration of this bill. All members in favor say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it.
This House is now in committee.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that clause 1 stand part.
Beg to second that.
Question is that clause 1 stand part. All honourable members in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that clause 2 stand part.
Beg to second that.
Question is that clause 2 stand part. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Schedule.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that the schedule be the schedule to the bill.
Beg to second that.
Question is that the schedule be the schedule to the bill. All honourable members in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Madam Chair, I move that you do not leave the chair and report progress, report to His Honour, the Deputy Speaker, the passing of one bill in committee.
Beg to second that.
Question is that I do not report to the Honourable Deputy Speaker the passing of one bill in committee. All honourable members in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman of committees have reported the passing of one bill in committee.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a third time.
Beg to second that.
The question is that this bill be read a third time. All members in favor say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it.
Mr. Deputy Chair, I beg to move that this bill do not pass and be cited as the Public Service Miscellaneous Provision Act 2019.
Beg to second that.
The question is that this bill be now passed and be so cited. All those honourable members in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. This bill is now passed and so cited.
Order number 6, sir. In the name of the Honourable Minister of Labour and Social Partnership Relations, to move the second reading of the Administrative Justice Amendment Bill 2019.
The honourable member for St. Peter.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is also a consequential amendment based on what we debated earlier to do with the adjustment to the Constitution. The Administrative Justice Act also has to reflect the creation of these 3 service commissions. And so with that, I would want to move that this bill be read a second time.
Make to second that.
The question is that this bill be read a second time. All members in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that the House, that you now leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
Make to second that.
The question is that I do now leave the chair and this House resolve itself in committee for further consideration of this bill. All members in favour say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it.
This is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 1 stand part.
Make to second that.
Question is that Clause 1 stand par. All honourable members in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 2 stand part.
Make to second that.
Question is that Clause 2 stand par. All honourable members in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 3 stand part.
Make to second that.
Question is that Clause 3 stand par. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Madam Chair, I beg that you do not report to His Honour, the Deputy Speaker, the passing of one bill in committee.
Make to second that.
Question is, I do not report to the Honourable Deputy Speaker the passing of one bill in committee. All honourable members in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman of committees have reported the passing of one bill in committee.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be now read a third time.
Make to second that.
The question is that this bill be read a third time. All members in favour say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that this bill do not pass and be cited the Administrative Justice Amendment Act.
Make to second that.
The question is that this bill be now passed and be so cited. All those members in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. This bill is now passed and be so cited.
Deputy Speaker, with that we've come to the end of today's sitting. I beg to move that this sitting be suspended until Tuesday, the 12th of, adjourned until Tuesday, the 12th of August at 10 a.m.
Tuesday.
13th.
13th of August. I apologize.
Seconded? It was seconded? Seconded? Seconded. The question is that this House be now adjourned until Tuesday, the 13th of August at 10 o'clock in the morning. All members in favour say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. This House is now adjourned until Tuesday, the 13th of August at 10 o'clock in the morning.